Hello and welcome back to the Football Snapshot. I'm Lewis Nolan, and Liverpool were beaten 3-2 by Manchester United at Old Trafford. And although there were some positives, and I guess the positives you could take is the fact that Liverpool came back from 2-0 down to get it to 2-2 at one point, I don't think Liverpool deserved to take anything. And I think the negatives far outweigh any positives that we saw because I understand, and I do genuinely have some sympathy here, that Isak was out, that Hugo Ekitike was out, that Mo Salah was out. But apart from that, I struggle to think anything positively about the match. I struggle to think anything positively about Arne Slot because we saw the same issues we saw against Crystal Palace. We saw the same issues we've seen earlier in the season against teams like Fulham, against teams like Real Madrid, against teams like PSG, against teams like every single one we faced. We've seen that Liverpool can't press properly. And there are different aspects of this. You could start with the counter-attacks, the transitions that Manchester United have, because Manchester United in the first half especially were able to routinely after they won the ball because they won all the duels in the first half, by the way. Whenever they were able to win the duels, McAllister was the deepest midfielder. He struggled to deal with counterattacks. Gravenberch was a lot higher. He was positioned a lot higher, and he wasn't helping out in counterattacks because Arne Slot asked him to receive the ball in the half turn higher up the pitch. Curtis Jones could have been tucked in more to help McAllister out, but instead it was just a bloodbath basically. And I think we were very fortunate that we didn't concede more than two goals in that half. And I've seen talk online. People have basically been saying that the main issue was that we couldn't deal with the counterattacks and that our pressing from a settled block. And pressing from a settled block basically means when Manchester United have, comfortable control of the ball, say when their goalkeeper has it, when they build up from the back, our settled block, I thought was incredibly poor, despite some people saying that it was very good. And the reason why I say it was poor is because I got all the way back to the first goal. I got all the way back to the first goal because obviously it was a set piece, obviously it was a corner delivery. And in terms of analyzing corners, in terms of analyzing set pieces, I find that boring. I don't enjoy it. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to analyze the build up to that corner because what happened was we were in a mid block. We were in a 4-4-2 mid block. Florian Wirtz and Dominic Szoboszlai with tens. Cody Gakpo was on the left, Jeremy Frimpong was on the right. And in possession of the ball was Harry Maguire. And he was in his own half, but he was sort of, getting closer towards the halfway line. And then what he was able to do is that because there was no pressure on the ball, he decided to then carry the ball forward and make it a three versus two on the right side of the pitch, on their right side of the pitch and on our left side. And they're able to progress, they're able to win the corner, and they're able to score from that. And in terms of having no pressure on the ball, how many times have I said this season? How many times have you guys said that one of the biggest issues and one of the biggest concerns is that Liverpool, they don't pressure properly? And I take issue with the fact that this hasn't been addressed because when you have no pressure on the ball, then you can't be surprised when something happens because footballers, believe it or not, are very talented. And if you give them time and space, they'll do something. And there's an example that I picked out on one of my Substack articles where I talked about Manchester City and Kusanov had the ball. And again, we pressed on a 4-4-2 block and we were very poor once again. But the point is, I know that Kusanov isn't necessarily, he's no Mark Gay, he's a better ball player than him, for example. He's not even close to someone like Virgil van Dijk. But what they allowed Kusanov to do is they allowed him to switch play over to the other side of the pitch, and they were able to take advantage of the fact that Gravenberch was left two versus one. And that's the thing that we've been seeing all season. No pressure on the ball, allowing players who are talented, they're able to then do something with the ball and they're able to say, for example, what Harry Maguire did, bring the ball forward and impact play. And I understand that you can defend the corner better, and I understand that sometimes you won't be able to stop the centre back being able to carry the ball forward because that's what they'll do. That's what they'll do to break a block. I've seen William Saliba do it plenty of times and he's very good at it. But that also happened with Aiden Heaven on the other side. He was able to routinely break our mid block by just simply carrying it forward. And if your mid block is routinely broken by the fact that centre backs are able to carry through your shape or able to disrupt your shape, then I think you have serious issues. And that's why I don't agree when people have said to me that, or have said to other people that it was only the transitions we failed to deal with and we dealt with them in the second half. I disagree completely. I mean, there was a reason why Arne Slot changed the pressing shape in the first half. There was a reason why he put Cody Gakpo up at nine in the second half and he put Florian Wirtz out to the left. But again, I still take issues with that because people have said that we pressed really well for Cody Gakpo's goal. Because if you look at what happened, Lamens tried to pass it out to one of the midfielders. I believe it was Casemiro. I believe it was Casemiro because Casemiro and Kobbie Mainoo were playing the double pivot. Forgive me if I'm wrong there. But McAllister, with very clever movement, managed to intercept the pass, managed to pass to Dominic Szoboszlai. Szoboszlai laid it off for Cody Gakpo, and it was a fairly simple finish. But I take issue with people saying that that was good pressing because, first of all, it was a horrible pass, I think. And second of all, I don't think the passing lanes to Kobbie Mainoo or Casemiro are completely shut off because I think it was if it was a better pass, if he didn't make a mistake, I think Manchester United very easily play out of our shape. And I understand that, pressing, when you press the goalkeeper, you're inevitably going to leave a spare player free. But I do think that how Arne Slot sets us up in settled pressing when we're not, not defending counterattacks. I'm not talking about when we're defending counterattacks. I'm talking about settled shape defending. When we do that, I think we're one of the most exploitable teams in the league. And I have listed examples. I've listed examples where Fulham scored their opening. I can't remember whether it was Harry Wilson who scored against us, but it was Fulham's opening goal at Craven Cottage. They just played through our shape with ease. I've looked at games against Chelsea. I've looked at games against Bournemouth. I've looked at games against Atletico Madrid. I've looked at all of these teams, and they're consistently able to play through us, even though we technically are positioned high up the pitch. But our block is positioned so poorly, and our block is set up so in such an ill-fitting manner that teams don't have to play particularly hard and teams don't find it particularly hard to be able to play through us and then drive at goal and bring the ball to the final third. And I've seen people suggest that maybe Mohamed Salah dropping out of the team would help, but it didn't really help when we lost to Man United, did it? So I place all of that blame on Arne Slot because I'm not buying that, he needs to have Luis Diaz in the team to be able to press properly. I'm not buying that he has to have Darwin Núñez in the team to press properly. You can set your team up in a better way. You don't have to press high and leave gaps everywhere. You don't have to press in a mid block and allow, space to be exploited. You can still have pressure on the ball, but the problem is we don't press properly when we're pressing high because we leave gaps everywhere and we leave free men everywhere. And do not get me started on the +1 thing at the back because the +1 thing at the back pisses me off no end. So I'm not even, I don't want to talk about it. And then yeah, we can't press high properly. We leave gaps, we leave free men, and then when we're trying to defend deeper, we're not compact either. And I understand that the profiles don't help because if you look at McAllister's performance, for example, at Old Trafford, he struggled physically. He couldn't cover distances. He didn't clear things properly, and he wasn't defensively switched on. I would also say that Gravenberch has proven again himself to be a weak defender, and I understand that, some of the underlying data suggests that he's a really good, he can intercept things well or he can position himself well, but he's probably the weakest in terms of the midfield, in terms of tracking runners, and I think that's a serious weakness that can be exploited. So my point is that I don't. I understand to some extent that people say that things will be better when we sign new players, but as long as Liverpool are, set up poorly when we press from the front, as long as Liverpool are set up poorly when we're in a mid block, we'll continue to concede goals, and that will cap our ceiling. And when you're Liverpool Football Club, if you have a capped ceiling, that's often not good enough because the teams that you're competing against and the teams that you want to finish ahead of also want to win things and they want to win the Premier League, they want to win the Champions League. And do you think that Arteta would accept Arsenal being as poor defensively as we are? And I understand, by the way, that Arteta probably goes too far to one end. He probably goes too far to the defensive extreme, and that could cost them the Premier League title on goal difference because they're not attacking enough, they're not offensive enough. But we have very talented players, although they're not perfect, and they could be doing better. They could be set up better. They could be set up to do more. And we definitely, definitely, definitely should not be on 58 points. We should not be in a position where after 35 games in the Premier League season, after we've lost, I think it's 12 times in the Premier League, 18 games in all competitions. And if you want to count the Community Shield, that's 19 losses. And 19 losses, I believe, is the most defeats we've ever had in the 21st century. So, I mean, we have to also play Chelsea. We also have to play Aston Villa and we also have to play Brentford. Probably the hardest game there is the Brentford game, but Liverpool make every game hard. So I'm not even backing us to get. I don't want to say I'm not backing us to get any points, but the thing is, I'm not confident that we'll be able to beat any of those teams. And we have 58 points after 35 games in the Premier League season. It's not acceptable. And so I'll tell you something else, by the way. I'm not having people who say that Klopp had poor seasons as well, because Klopp, I think he hasn't. I don't think in his entire tenure at Liverpool, I don't think he's had a poorly coached season, and I think that's the difference to Arne Slot. I don't think Jurgen Klopp ever set the team up poorly in terms of coaching because you look at the 2 seasons where we didn't meet expectations or we didn't challenge for the title. I would say that the first one would be when we finished third after we won the Premier League. That would be the 2021 season. Every single centre back got injured. And then the replacements that we signed, Kabak and Davis, they got injured. You have to play Fabinho, you have to play Henderson in defence. And I understand that maybe that he should have trusted Reece Williams, he should have trusted, you know, Nat Phillips more, or he should have given them opportunities earlier in the season. But I understand that Liverpool weren't able to do much because if you have no centre backs, you won't be able to defend. And we still finished third. We still ended the season really well. I think in the last 12 games, it was 10 wins and two draws. So you can see that the momentum was building and there was something to look forward to in the following campaign. And that was the season where we nearly won the quadruple. And I understand you can say that maybe if Klopp had have done this, if he had selected that player, we would have won the quadruple. But at the same time, I'm not going to be overly angry about that season. I'm just going to be a little bit disappointed we didn't walk away with the Premier League or the Champions League. And then the season that Klopp finished fifth, which I do not want to remember that season ever, which was 22-23. The midfield legs just completely fell off. And I don't think it's the same with Arne Slot with the midfield because I think you can maybe argue that McAllister's fitness is horrible, but Gravenberch is still young. He's still in his, he's still got the prime years ahead of him. He's still fit. He can still be energetic when he wants to be. Dominic Szoboszlai, incredibly energetic, never stops running. But I think the biggest issue is that the fitness of the players in terms of being able to consistently run high distances and being able to switch it on in big games is not there. And then, that's the thing. I don't Klopp's midfield was finished. This midfield isn't. That's my point. I understand that we might need two midfielders in the summer, but I think that the midfielders that we currently have are being set up to fail, even though they're not helping themselves. I think the bigger issue again is the manager and the setup. And then, look, you can maybe say that Klopp's final season, we finished third behind Arsenal and Man City, and that we should have done more. But at the same time, it was a decent placement. We finished with 82 points in the Premier League, which is only 2 points less than we got last season. And I understand last season, technically, you could say that we took the last four games easy, but I prefer to look at things in a more nuanced way. And I prefer to say that, were the performances good? Were they not good? Did Klopp have injuries that completely debilitated his team? Were we able to compete? Were we playing well? Things like that. And when I look at Arne Slot's time at Liverpool, I would say that I haven't been impressed by them probably since around January, February 2025. So this is well over 12 months of being poor. This is well over 12 months of concerning performances. And things have not improved. And things, look, they're better than when we lost 9 and 12. But in terms of where we were, I think they're consistently on a downward trajectory. And they might improve when we sign new players, but I don't think they'll improve enough for us to be able to compete for the Premier League title. Because in order for us to compete for the Premier League title, we might need a player to have the season that Salah had. Do you see that? Do you see a player capable on the market or in the current team of having a season like Salah had? I don't. So as much as people want to defend Arne Slot, as much as people want to say things aren't necessarily all of his fault, and I agree, it's not all of his fault, but I'd say it's mostly his fault. And I don't see how this can continue. I really don't. I've seen, journalists are getting a bit more critical of him, which, people like David Lynch have been critical of him and they've criticized the performances and they've said for a long time that, you know, they don't think it can continue like this. But I'm talking about other journalists. I'm talking about Paul Joyce. I'm talking about, I think I saw Alex Crook call Arne Slot deluded in his press conference. So, yeah, I think that I don't want to say the tide is turning, but people are struggling to contain themselves. And, we've got three more games left of the season. Imagine we don't get Champions League. We're going to get Champions League. We're 6 points ahead of Bournemouth, who are sixth. So I think we should be confident where maybe one more win would do it. And, as much as Aston Villa, Chelsea, and Brentford could be difficult, we'll get at least 3 points. We'll get at least 3 points. If we don't, then yeah, serious conversations need to be had. But yeah, I'm sick of talking about Liverpool. It's annoying me. Liverpool are bad. I don't want to talk about Liverpool being bad, but they are. So yeah. Thank you for watching the football snapshot. And look, if you would like and subscribe, it might cheer me up. And, maybe we can, again, I'm going to do a live stream this week, by the way. I'm going to do a live stream this week, and I promise you guys that. And I'm going to talk to you and going to answer your questions. So stay tuned. And hopefully you subscribe to my Substack. Hopefully you follow me on Twitter. And the descriptions will be, the links to those will be in the description, by the way. So, please check that out. But